couple more subtleties with the letters. That's what I was going to talk about. The real visual subtleties when we get into lettering. Number 10 Downing Street. If you look at it, the letter, the 0, is canted over like that. It ain't straight. Now, there's all sorts of theories. One would say, no, it was done by a drunk signwriter and all the rest of it. That, I think, what they've got on number 10 Downing Street at the moment is actually wrong. Because what it should be, I can probably show you in the book better, is the outer circle is actually vertical. It's the inner circle that's ever so slightly canted over. And it's actually 82 degrees. Now, this book, Trade and Roman Lettering, Elsie Everett's, to me it's a definitive book on lettering because what it does two things. It has the geometry, the mathematical construction of the letter. But then it goes into almost a poem on this side, and it's about the artistry and the subtlety and the slight optical adjustments that are made to that mathematical framework with the human eye. So it's got all the little subtleties and alterations. So you have the mathematical construction and then the subtleties of the adjustments. So on your letter A, you've got 70 degrees on one and 80 degrees on the other. And on the serifs on the letter T, one's 82 degrees and one's 80 degrees. Why do they do it? Because it gives vitality on the line. It makes it jump a bit. It's ever so subtle, but it just gives it that little bit of interest, and it's barely perceptible, but it's important. And when you get into like your letter B's and your letter D's, it's where the weight of the letter falls. So on your letter D, your weight tends to be there on the letter. It's stronger in the curve. Anybody got any questions?
When you do the 1 or the H and
Yeah.
you come down with the 2 lines, are they dead in line or do they curve a little?
Have we heard of entasis on columns or entasis? I don't know how people pronounce it. Right. Your letter I is basically it's ever so subtly like that. As are all the vertical strokes. If you pass it around, you can see how subtle it is. Those are the lines, and then it's slightly curved in.
You see all these things go right back to Roman and Greek times. They're the people that worked it all out.
Yes. I'm developing talks because I teach graining, marbling and signwriting, and I've done quite a lot of studying of Greek and Roman architecture. There's a classical Doric corner problem that drove the Greeks mad. There ain't a straight line on the Parthenon. It's all over the whole length of it. It raises 4.5 inches. There's the entasis in the columns, which is a bulging out, which they said was done for optical reasons. And I've read a lot of stuff on it, and then there was a paper written on, is it engineering, art or science? And basically, the thickening of the column, they reckon ultimately, was because it strengthened the column. And the columns not only, they inclined slightly on the building, which must have been a nightmare to make it. But a good reason for that would have been earthquakes. And it's only very subtle. It's only 2 or 3 inches over the total height of the column. And the columns are inclined. But it all derives from that because going back to letter spacing in some ways, each column was a module, and then all the rest of the building was based on that module. The frieze and the coving and all this sort of thing were all mathematical fractions of that. I got reading on architecture, and Plato come up with the Platonic scales for music. So they thought, right, if it sounds good, it's got to look good. So they started building classical buildings to these musical harmonies. And I thought, oh yeah, that makes logical sense and all the rest of it. And then there were all these Fibonacci sequences and golden sections. And I read this book in Hogarth, William Hogarth and Edmund Burke. They had like an inquiry into the sublime, the beautiful and the picturesque. And he said, it's all a lot of there's absolutely no correlation between music and harmony and architectural proportion. But then again, it sort of like works, because the Georgians never really put up a bad building because they followed.
Oh, yeah,
They followed the rules.
You're just looking at 6-panel Georgian doors.
Yes.
The proportions.
Perfect.
Right,
Absolutely perfect, yeah.
On your tea, if you were doing that,
Yeah.
would you just take a stab in the dark at your angles?
Yes. Yeah. It just becomes natural, really. Just give it a little bit more.
Yeah.
When I had my business partnership, I set up years ago, I set up with a poster writer. Talk about letter spacing with poster writers and everything goes out the window. They just reverse everything. The top of the letter S is weighted entirely upside down and the other way. They just exaggerate everything. So your letter N, you know, this will just fly up here above the line. But the difference between a sign writer and a poster writer is I could never knock when he was doing sign writing, I could never knock the poster writer out of him. And when I was sign writing, he could never try and do poster writing, he couldn't knock it out of me. Because a sign writer is disciplined, he stands there with a maul stick and he bangs the letters out. A poster writer puts his hand in his pocket and he lays back and he goes like that. But it's very effective and it's very quick. But that breaks all the rules, all those disciplines, and everything goes right out the window with poster writing. There's one little visual experiment that doesn't always work, but if you give most people a box and you say, okay, this is a landscape and you've got to put a line in it for the sea and the sand, you've got to put the sun in there and you've got to put a palm tree in there. So you've got like these 3 different elements there. Generally, they'll put the beach down here, they'll put the sun up here, and they'll put the palm tree there if they're right-handed. Because that's visually comfortable. The sun's above visual centre, there. This is the biggest element, and most people who are right-handed will put that thing to the side, and then this is generally a third of the way up, which is where we're comfortable with. That's what most people will visually default to. Because there's absolutely no reason why, really. They wouldn't, you know, you couldn't have this up here, the sun over here, and the palm tree leaning that way. But it always leans in. They always draw it leaning in because it just looks plain wrong, leaning outwards. And I suppose a lot of it's convention and cultural and what our eyes have been educated to, whether we realise it or not. We just pick up on them cues. And that's how that's what we're used to looking at. Yeah. Well, this is why the little degrees of going back to the serifs on the letter T. You know, this one they just lead in that way, and it just gives a little bit more flow to lettering and pulls you along.